the idea behind this podcast came from when I was discussing a bunch of things with some engineers that live in Hong Kong or just visit China regularly to visit all these factories and, you know, manage the stuff that they make. And I wanted to bring all these stories to you guys because they're just so darn interesting. This is really just a pilot episode, and I mean, I don't know if you guys will find it interesting because, like, I didn't realize that a lot of the stuff that we discussed is just super confidential, that we can't really discuss publicly. So the first episode was a little bit of a mix-up. Let me know what you think. Do you think I should go in this direction? It's called, the podcast is called Backstage because it's kind of more than just FPV. It's kind of just in general discussing various things in the world and just behind the scenes. At least that was the goal behind the scenes. So let me know what you think. Bye.
I'm Warwick from Underground FPV. And been in Hong Kong for a while, and I travel to China quite frequently. And there's a lot of stories back there, which I don't mind sharing.
And then Captain
Underpants here. Thor's the name. Yeah, part of the team at Underground FPV. Recently did the trip into China and had my mind blown on a daily. Yeah, just glad to be here, to be honest.
Okay, so the last discussion we had about motors, I attempted to make the motor video, which was okay. I got a bunch of stuff wrong, but a lot of people corrected me, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff. The general questions, I mean, people had so many random questions about it. Real quick, before going forward, so the whole concept of adding 3 extra poles to the motor to get a smoother motor, how much do you think that would actually help in terms of smoothness?
It'll help a lot in terms of smoothness, but you do lose a bunch of you gain a little bit of torque, but you lose a lot of power. We actually had this conversation only 2 days ago with one of the motor engineers, one of the head of the engineering guys from BBB, and we were talking about the poles on the motors, and he said, you know, let's add a few more poles, let's get it really smooth. And his response was, "There's no power," and just kept saying it. What about if we did this? And he goes, "No power, no." Like, if I don't the power, he goes, "No power," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is a losing battle."
So then, what if you reduce the number of poles?
If you reduce the number of poles, then you gain more power. It's the same way an RC car works. So in the RC car motors with the in-runners, you have less poles to create more power.
But like, how much? Like, what's the definition of smoothness to be lost?
Well, it was around about 15%. So if I added 3 poles, I'd gain 15% more smooth. But I don't know the actual figure of how much power loss that there was going to be at that point, because he couldn't tell me.
What's the definition of smooth?
Smooth is you getting rid of the coggy feeling, so it's reducing the amount of vibration the motor has.
Oh, so it actually would reduce the noise going back.
Not really noise, but more vibration, really, than anything. You know, when you look in your black box and you're seeing the gyro data come through, and you can see the vibrations from the motors as you're spinning them up. Obviously, if you've got a more coggy motor, you'll see a lot higher amount of vibrations. It's one of the reasons why if we actually went F4, 32, 32K, all that kind of stuff way back in the day, like 6 months ago,
right.
Way back in the day for FPV is 6 months, right? Actually, we would have been fine. We wouldn't have seen a lot of the problems that we have with all this needing to soft mount and everything, because the motors didn't have such strong magnets, and they weren't as powerful as they are now. So probably didn't even need to soft mount back then if you were running. Now the motors are becoming more powerful with stronger magnets. We're seeing more vibrations, which means you need to soft mount as much as possible and get rid of those vibrations that you don't expect from the motors.
Oh. Is anybody in China doing any kind of flight software development in this?
Not really. Not really.
At all. They just pick up a flight and call it a day.
Yeah, 99% of them are just doing whatever Betaflight puts out. and they're riding off Betaflight's development than anything else. There's a couple of them who are doing their own independent stuff, but that independent stuff goes straight into other projects. So, for example, one company that's been around for a long time, which probably nobody knows about, their name is Big Fly Shark, and they were making some really cool flight controllers that were very DJI without breaking patents, but they were writing their own flight algorithms and stuff. But now most of the Big Fly Shark stuff is in Hubsan. So in the Hubsan, I don't even know what it's called, the one that's black and gold with a camera in it. That one's Big Fly Shark control in it, and all the micro quads have got Big Fly Shark in it. And they're doing their own development on the flight control, but it's all closed source proprietary. And so, there is a couple, but they're mainly doing that kind of stuff.
So there's a lot more people that can write this flight code than people expect. It's not like unique to like Boris and his team of people and race flight, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right. It's a totally different area when you start looking a little bit deeper into it. But then these guys are doing their own stuff, really focused on either toy or commercial, so they're not wanting to contribute to Betaflight or anything like that. And also, GitHub is blocked in China, so they can't contribute to the code. The Great Firewall of China, that everything is blocked there.
Do they have their own version of GitHub? They have their own version of everything. They have to have their own version of GitHub.
I don't think they actually do.
Weird. Oh, because it's not such like a free market, open source, happy day kind of place?
No. What's the point of open source in China when you can just get it from someone else and copy it anyway? So there's no such thing as open source, really. Well, I would like to go back to the way that boards are cloned, because it's actually really, really interesting how they do it.
Yeah.
So basically, they'll take all the components off the board that they're trying to copy, and they'll lay them out into a tray so they can work out what components they need to buy to replicate it. Then from there, they've got it's called a decker. So it'll deck layers off the board, and it'll shave it layer by layer and reveal each copper trace. So if you've got a 12-layer board, they've got to do it 12 times.
Wait, what? Take off the copper, you mean?
Yeah, so they'll take off the top layer to expose the first layer of tracks. And then once they get that layer of tracks, then they will X-ray it so that they have the exact layer. Then they'll shave it again to reveal the next layer underneath that, take an X-ray, and they've got the second layer. And they'll keep doing that until they've got every single track on the board. So they don't actually even need a schematic to reproduce the board. They just relay the X-ray onto a new transfer, create a new board, and then they've suddenly got a clone, and you can do it within a couple of days.
Wow. So there's no circuit board that's safe?
Not really, no. I mean, this is the way that guys like Connex and so forth are actually able to keep their stuff proprietary, is because they're doing in the chip. So there's no way to copy a chip unless you got millions of dollars, and also the firmware inside is encrypted, so you can't even suck the firmware out and copy that. So if you're going to do it and you want to protect what you've got, you need to do it at a chip level and chip level and firmware level. But so what the guys like Happy Model are doing, so they'll go out to a recycling yard. So the recycling yard, for example, you're making F4 boards. So you'll actually they'll take automotive components like center consoles out of cars as they're being recycled from the scrapyard. And there might be F4 chips in the back of the center console that runs the air conditioning, right? And then little guys will sit there with heat guns, and they'll desolder each component off the board and put it into a bucket. Then when you want to go and buy something as a manufacturer and you want to use recycled products, you'll go and buy a bucket of F4 chips. You'll put on a scale and weigh it, and you'll buy these recycled chips by the kilo. It's good because it's recycling, but at the same time, that F4 chip may have been in the car for 10 years. You don't know how long that chip's been used for and how hard it's been used. And it's just, you have no idea, basically. It'll either work for ages and it'll be fine, or it'll work for half an hour and then fail. You just don't know.
Yeah. Hits and miss, right?
Yeah, totally hit and miss, yeah.
So are there companies that only use new components?
Yeah, a lot of so generally you can tell by the price. When you start paying more for a product and you basically compare the price online, you go, oh, that's quite a bit more expensive. Well, then you know you're getting a genuine product usually. When it's cheap for a reason, and this is the way China works, right? In particular, okay, you're buying a product. So let's say I'm buying a fidget spinner, right? So I'm buying a fidget spinner for $1. That's what they cost. They cost $1 or under that. Now, I say to the manufacturer, so it's a metal, aluminium fidget spinner with 2 bearings in it. And I've said, okay, I don't want to pay you $1. I know it's worth 75 cents. I'm going to pay you 75 cents. So they go, you negotiate hard with them. You go real hard on the negotiation. And eventually, after the way the Chinese deals work, you come to a point where it's like, okay, I'll pay you 80 cents each one. And then they'll manufacture the product for you. But because you negotiated so hard and they're not willing to lose their margin out of it, that they'll actually not tell you, but they'll replace a specific component with a cheaper component. So, for example, the bearings, you might say, I want Japanese bearings, and they might go, okay, they'll go get a bearing which says Japanese, but it's made in China. So, and then when you go, hey, the final product, it doesn't sound right, there's something wrong with it, they'll turn around and say, yeah, you said you want Japanese bearings, so we got you Japanese bearings because it says Japanese on it, but it's made in China, right? And this is how they cut the corners. And generally you'll see, okay, if your price is cheaper, it's because the corners have been cut. It's a generalization, but 99% of the time, if you're looking for a product, you can tell straight up. If it's cheap, you're getting something that's cheap.
Yeah, so then, like, Racer Star motors from Banggood are all just discarded components of other manufacturers.
Yeah, right. So, a lot of it is just leftover bits and pieces that they didn't want or didn't use, or manufacturing runs that had an anodizing problem, or bird screw threads or something, and they had to discard them. And then they just, instead of throwing them away, they just buy them cheap. And then they just rebuild a product out of it. But, if it's cheap, and this is an interesting thing with motors, and I know I'm like just stealing the whole conversation at the moment, but we were going over specifically wire, right? So the wire has different grades that you can use. And so from the smaller suppliers that supply the wire by the ton instead of opposed to 10 tons, 10 tons of wire per order, they're actually using a different grade of copper, which is cheaper, and it has a different efficiency level. So I don't know enough about it to have a full rundown on what the grades of copper are, but I know it's a very common practice to make things cheaper to use a cheaper copper.
So then, so we can assume that all the manufacturers are doing this. Like, I think it's really pretty darn difficult for even somebody that's bench testing, Ryan Harold of Mini Quad Test Bench, to decipher whether the copper is high quality or low quality. So then, how can we determine? Is there any way to determine if you have good copper windings or not?
Probably not unless you're a metallurgical engineer, where you could actually take a strand of the copper and then actually examine it. But I mean, Ryan knows through the figures that he does on the test bench, right? If the figures come out low, it's because they're using cheap magnets and cheap copper. It's pretty obvious.
It's got more resistance because this looks like dirty copper.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know whether it creates more resistance. I don't know enough about it to actually give an accurate opinion on it. I just know what happens, and I know what my engineers have told me about why we don't use a certain copper from a certain supplier, and why we have to buy 10 tons instead of buying 1 ton. This is where the difference lies in a lot of the stuff, is that engineers say, I will not do that, but some engineers go, yep, no problems, we do. And then you get it and you're like, oh, it's okay. It's not that great. It's not junk, but it's not great.
Okay, so this is actually really helpful in the single-stranded versus multi-stranded debate, which is, well, single-stranded thick copper wire is going to be more expensive than multi-stranded, right?
Yep.
So the same money spent on multi-stranded will arguably get you better quality copper.
Yes.
So all other physics discussions aside, you're probably getting better quality copper with multi-stranded wires.
Well, I mean, still, that's also hard to say because
Very generalization.
it's very, very general. And it was an interesting discussion that I had with our other engineer the other night who was talking about, and he used to wind his own motors as well. Yes, you can get the air gap a bit tighter on the single-stranded. So you have a tighter air gap on single-strand wire, but at the same time, you can actually, it's easier to get more copper into a multi-strand. So if you're getting more copper in, you're getting more electrical current, more of a magnetic field.
But like people were arguing that there's like enamel thicknesses, and then the multi-stranded is messy and it doesn't really lay over it evenly. Any of that stuff matter?
Yeah, it does, and it comes down to how much are you paying for your wire. So are you paying? So it also depends on how fast the machine works. So there's a lot of hearsay about that, because when you actually go to the factory, some of them are hand winding and so forth, which takes longer. But they can't do as many motors. And you'll see that the enamel thickness, yes, it makes a difference, because the thicker the enamel, the less air. Sorry, the higher the air gap you have between strands and so forth. But then it's like, how much are you paying? You're paying for a really good quality enamel coating on your wire, which makes it very close together, and then have a higher temperature tolerance. Or do you want to go cheap and just buy something that they've dipped to get the enamel coating on the wire? And then it comes down to the machine as well. So if you're trying to punch out, say, 5,000 motors and you've got a deadline to do it in a week, the Chinese factories will turn up the speed of the machine. And turning up the speed means that the winding isn't as neat. And so that means it becomes a bit messier, and then you're not getting as a closer gap between the windings.
Yeah, and then you were also telling me about the loctite that they use.
Yeah.
3M.
Where does the loctite come from?
Yeah, you can jump in on that. You were there for that conversation.
Yeah, so basically the Triple B guys that we work quite closely with, when we sat down with them and they were showing us some of the new stuff, they were saying, this actually uses real 3M. And we were like, real 3M? Like, is there a fake 3M? And it came to light that, you buy something called 3M doesn't necessarily mean it's 3M, especially in China. So these guys contacted 3M directly and placed an order with them, so that we don't have the issue of stripping screws when we try and take them out the bases of motors and things like that. When it goes into the shaft. And this actually just happened to me the other day. I was sorting some motors out, and all 4 screws out the base totally stripped, because they've put cement on the thread. And just frustrating. And just going back to, Warwick was saying that, like, there's excellent engineers in China, and that's the truth. There are. I mean, the knowledge that's held there is phenomenal, right? But it also comes down to the company ethos that they're working for. Like, if the company is dictating that they need to cut corners, it doesn't matter if the engineer is great. The end result is a cheap, nasty, corner-cutting product. And that's the biggest thing. So it does boil down to price. Like, you get what you pay for, unfortunately.
One thing I always try and point out, like, I don't care, I'm just going to pay less anyway. But it's, okay, let's say you get some cheap ESCs, right? And those cheap ESCs are using recycled components, which you don't know about, or you might know about, who knows. But the thing is that you buy 4, and then 1 breaks, and then another 1 breaks. So then you've had to wait 2 weeks to get another 1 ESC. Then the next one breaks, and then you got to wait another 2 weeks to get another ESC. So you spent 4 weeks downtime where you can't fly. Plus, you've actually bought 6 ESCs, which 6 ESCs for a decent set would have been 4 ESCs of a decent set, which probably wouldn't break. So have you really saved money by going cheaper?
Well, the thing is that I think has a lot to do with why I have no problems with these all-in-one boards. Like, because they're all, like, the ones that you guys are making and the couple of ones I have from Airbot are actually reputable manufacturers. Like, they don't burn out. They don't have issues. It was all the other boards that I constantly had problems with. Like, I haven't burnt out an ESC in over a year for no reason. It's always been physical damage. If it didn't have physical damage, it doesn't burn out. So can we even expect things to burn out ever if it's at least manufactured properly?
Well, I mean, as we're coming into the era of 32-bit, you're probably going to find that you're not going to burn ESCs anymore as long as you've set it up right. Current limiting and so forth plays a big role in actually stopping that ESC from burning up, especially if using turtle mode and stuff like that. I blow up plenty of ESCs, but that's because it's my job to push things to its limit. I push it and push it and push it until it breaks, and then I work out how to make it better. And that's one of the reasons I'm not pushing the product here, but there is definitely good manufacturers of products, which are reputable, but then at the same time, there's also good manufacturers of product who do lots of testing to make sure that their stuff's right. And if you make sure it's right before it goes out and people buy it, then that's a really big important thing as a Western manufacturer or Western retailer of product. That's really important to make sure you get that downtime in testing. Like, a lot of guys go, hey, why isn't this ready yet? You know, we've been waiting for a long time. And, you know, one of the biggest things is we just want to make sure that there's no errors. And there's other manufacturers that do the same thing as well. And I think it's really important that people are spending time to make sure stuff is tested before you even sell it. It's important.
So the other thing is that, okay, regarding the goggles, you said that there's some other companies. There are companies that have generations ahead in goggle technology. Like, why are these companies held back? Why are they not releasing? Are they looking for a customer to, like, OEM?
Most of these companies, they're trying to perfect the technology before it goes out because, I mean, let's face it, look what happened to Top Sky when they released their goggle. So they released their goggle prematurely and it nearly killed them. I did get word from them actually only yesterday that they've fixed the issues and they're sending me a set to take a look at. And so we'll have a look and see how those go. And it's good to see that they fixed it. But it's like I said, if you're not testing and you just kind of push something out, you're just going to destroy your own product. And that's what, it's a very good example. And I think a lot of these other guys who do have the technology to make a decent set of goggles are making sure that it's right before they release it to the public. I know that they exist and I've seen them from a few different manufacturers, but I know that they're also trying to make sure that they work.
And then they will release them, or they will OEM them to somebody else, like Fat Truck or somebody. Yeah,
they'll release them. I'm pretty sure whoever the factories are that are making them that I can't say. They'll just release them and when they're ready.
So is it even worth somebody trying to make a new pair of goggles right now? Like, probably these companies are so far ahead. So it's not even, like, worth the trouble.
Not really. I mean, again, we go back to that conversation where everything's, like, so price focused at the moment, where EA Sheen come out with a very, very, very cheap goggle where they're making no money because they're playing the long game, right? But then you get a cheap product in the end because it is what it is, right? You pay cheap, they're cutting corners on the optics, so it's cheap. But then, is there a market for that? I mean, what are the customers? Are people out there who are flying FPV or want to get into FPV? It's worth. This is what I always try and say. It's like it's worth paying more for a product that is important to your health, right? So you can buy cheap props and they explode and then you just keep replacing them, whatever. They're cheap props. You might not get the best experience, but hey, it's a couple of dollars, whatever. But if you're talking about something that's attached to your body, like your eyesight, and you get a product that's really screwing with your eyes, right? Your eyes are attached to your brain, and it does all kinds of funny things when you mess with your eyes. And you can talk to an optometrist. It'd actually be good to get an optometrist in to talk about what happens if you wear wrong glasses and how that affects your eyes, and how that affects your brain. I think that'd be a really interesting discussion. But it's the same with goggles, right? You're messing with your eyes. You only get one set of eyes. You can't replace them.
I actually dated an ophthalmologist once, like a year ago, and she was telling me she was very concerned about the goggles, and she looked at them very curiously, and she thought they were all going to go blind because of the lenses. She's like, these lenses are the worst lenses I've ever seen. They're plastic, they're garbage, they're low index lenses. Like, why are they using these lenses for eyes? Product should be illegal in the United States.
Hey Bob, was the ophthalmologist, was she a looker?
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Well, the thing is I've been in China a long time, so I know most of the owners of all these factories, so they'll usually send me a message saying, hey, what do you reckon about this? And I'm like, that's cool. I'm on my way. So, usually I try and maintain a relationship with, if you're not in China or close to it, there is no way that you'll actually even get a foot in the door, because the relationship isn't with the salesperson. They're nothing actually in this industry. They forget that you're even there. You actually need to form a relationship with the owner of the factory, sit down and have drinks with them on a weekly or bi-monthly occurrence. Otherwise, you just get lost in the background noise.
Wow. So you just go and visit them all day long, constantly.
You have to. And if you're not, then one, you're going to pay a higher price, and two, you're going to get the product last.
But wait, so you're doing this for other clients? Or, I mean, the stuff isn't on Underground FPV.
Well, we do have a large back end where we sell to local hobby stores and so forth, and help to give them a heads up to try and beat guys like Banggood, so that the local hobby shop can have something in before Banggood does. So we have a large back end of stuff which we do for those guys, and it doesn't necessarily appear on our main front end.
How the hell does Banggood have you meet with anybody from Banggood? Do you know people from Banggood?
Yeah, I do.
How do they have this damn company under control? It is such an enormous website. They have every industry on the website, and they have 10,000 SKUs for every industry. So you said they have like massive factories where they just warehouses where they store all this stuff?
Yeah, and I know for a fact that they either just open or they're just opening a new warehouse even in Australia, which is like, Australia is a black hole of a market. It's nothing. It's a tiny little nothing. I'm from Australia. Compared to the FPV market and the rest of the world, Australia is it's tiny. But they're opening a warehouse there in Australia, so it's like you guys are absolutely everywhere in your growth.
God damn. So their product management system must be as sophisticated as Amazon. They carry more products than Amazon.
I don't know how they manage that, actually. Yes, they definitely must have a huge web development team. I do know, though, that GearBest actually spends more money on its infrastructure than Banggood does.
So, but Banggood has like managers for every division. Like they get new products as well. For every industry, how do they stay on top of it? How on earth did they build this damn company? Like it went from nothing. It's like 4 years ago it was nothing, and now it's just this most enormous company that just ships everything to the United States.
Yeah.
Where do they even find people? Where do they find managers to manage just the YouTube advertisers? Like those people are pretty darn good. How do they find trustable people like that?
I don't even know whether they're trusted. They're just dudes who just work there. I do, because I know Like, there's a guy who primarily does tiny whoop stuff, and Banggood are like, hey, can we send you some 5-inch props? And it's like, you should know me by now. I don't do anything 5-inch. So I think they're just kind of there to smash the product out to reviewers so that they can sell some.
With that said, though, they're pretty strict on who they send their stuff to. I know they have like a minimum. Yeah, I think you have to have like 10K subs and stuff like that. But I think what a lot of people forget as well, like just diverging a bit from the Banggood saga. I mean, like, you can buy subs online if you really want to, and it's something that we've discussed because. Yeah, we get a lot of people also asking us, like, hey, let's review some stuff, and you've really got to go through it with a fine tooth comb. But yeah, they've got quite a strict criteria with who they send stuff to, I believe.
Oh, that's very interesting. I forgot about that. Like, I have some friends that I've met that all they do is Instagram. That's like their business. It's just their Instagram people, and it's
How much
amazing.
Does it cost?
Yeah,
say that again.
It's how much does what cost?
How much does the sub cost?
It depends.
So
they're actually graded, right?
Super graded, super great. So so in dentistry, I've got a friend that I went to undergrad with. He graduated Harvard Dental School, Harvard Specialty School, like 2 years after I graduated, and so he started working in Beverly Hills. He started an Instagram account, and then the next day he had 40,000 followers, and he had no pictures posted. He had no pictures posted at all. So immediately I knew, okay, this account is entirely fake. And then I met these other two girls that all they do is they have claimed themselves public figures, social influencers, and their only income is from Instagram, and they're part of like studio, like an Instagram studio, just like YouTube. There's like the 3 big YouTube studios, and the studio kind of manages everything for them. And like a brand that wants to advertise a jacket or something, they send it out to their appropriate Instagram people, and they write a post about some crap or something. And like a day of work for her is literally like wake up, put on some Under Armour stuff, take a whole bunch of pictures doing yoga, and then like all the pre-written paragraph that they've written for her so that it sounds more like it came from her rather than some marketing person. And that she gets paid like $1,000 for that. Like and she has 300,000 followers. Well, one of them has 300,000, the other one has like 1 million followers. But like 300,000 followers is enough to have a pretty substantial income. And she says that they're all real followers. She built them up over 4 years. She has a past. She used to do acting and like skits and comedy, and they all follow her from that. And it's just incredible because Instagram is such a shitty app. Like Facebook does such a garbage job of managing the app. Nothing works. Videos don't load. You don't know what you're getting. You look at people's profiles. They have 20,000 followers, and you look at a picture and they have 10 likes, and it's confusing. It's just garbage. So it's confusing that people are actually making money. Like, that's her only business. That's it. That's all she does. She has no other income. She lives in LA. LA is an expensive place to live. Like, what is she going to do in 20 years when she's not like this little hot girl that does yoga? like what is she going to do?
Yeah. Where's the future? I totally get that. That's really cool, actually. It's kind of cool that you can do something like that and make that money so quickly, and then, I don't know, invest it into a tech company like Apple and then become a millionaire in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that, and then Bitcoin, with the whole Bitcoin thing that's going on. Do you guys have any ties to the Bitcoin community in China? Have you been to the mining places?
I haven't been to a mining place, but I have been watching what's going online with it and so forth, and it's pretty crazy. I watched a couple of articles about guys who were mining Bitcoin and their setups, and it's just like it's crazy. You know, there's just thousands of servers in a shanty with fans blowing on them to keep them cool, and they're mining Bitcoin. But now it's outlawed in China. I don't even know if those guys are still
outlawed for a long time. Yeah, it's been outlawed for a while. But China's still the primary traders in Bitcoin, and a lot of the hashing power comes. I think a good portion of the hashing power comes directly from China, and there's entire cities dedicated to mining. Like I was talking to this one guy. He has a mining YouTube channel. He said he visited this mining city in China, which it's just like a building built into the side of a mountain, a big building, and there's a waterfall next door to the building, and that's what they use to power the building. So they're literally extracting money from water. Like it's a miracle.
That's awesome.
Truly a miracle. Like there's a massive river and a waterfall, and they're not even the biggest one. This is like a common thing. Anywhere that there's a river in China, you will find mining factories because they use the water for cooling and for power generation. And
that is amazing.
It truly is amazing. It's incredible. Like my jaw dropped when he was telling me about it. I'm like, this is the smartest people in the world. Like why are we not doing this in America? Like there's rivers along here. Nobody's using any of that power. It's just flowing. Yeah. It's just going to waste. We're not doing anything.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah. All I can think about now is just how these guys must just be driving along the side of the road and they see a river there and they're just like, oh, Bitcoin factory, Bitcoin mine. Yeah.
I wonder if there's stick ups, like people that go and like rob the place for Bitcoin, like physically walk into computer mine. I'm just gonna shoot all your computers if you don't just give me 10 Bitcoins.
Yeah, just put those Bitcoins into this plastic shopping bag, please.
Maybe they use virtual guns, right, for virtual currency heists.
Oh gosh, when I used to be into this cryptocurrency stuff a lot, the things that people would do to hack into other servers and it was amazing. Like there's truly geniuses, and that's the direction that they're in.
Yeah, that's definitely not Cape Town style mining, hey Thor.
No, bro. We still use picks and smash away the face of rocks for that speck of gold, right? It's all to end up in your grill.
What's the primary export of South Africa?
It's still gold, eh?
Really?
Yeah.
Diamonds and gold? Seriously? Like that is that rudimentary?
Yeah, I don't think diamonds in South Africa as such. I mean, we have Namibia, which is our neighboring country, and they have a big diamond export rig. But if I'm not mistaken, I think it's still gold.
Wow. That's kind of depressing.
Do they really still do blood diamonds? Does that actually exist, or was that just a movie?
No, but blood diamonds were a real thing. I mean, that is something that happens. Like with any high value commodity, right? You'll always get the dark side of it. So whether it be narcotics or raw mineral or whatever the case may be. In SA, I mean, you must remember SA is like an international portal. So the diamonds themselves will come from other countries, but primarily get smuggled through SA somehow.
So it's like Singapore.
Yeah, I mean it's a gateway, right? We have the biggest international airports and things like that. So on the African continent, really.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense. That's the amount of stuff that you guys could get through there. You could probably get anything, really, if that's the case.
I suppose so.
So
yeah, I suppose so.
How much have you talked to the Chinese government? I'm sure the government has everything to do with every industry in China. Have you talked to them about? Are they interested in anything in particular? Like people going back and forth from China that are in this industry are always worried that the government's just going to take me for their military and have me fly drones for them. Like, is there any kind of idea about anything like that?
Well, there's a huge push from the Chinese government at the moment to support the quad or drone industry, right? So at the moment, if you want to run a race in China, as long as you can provide evidence that you're bringing in foreigners to actually fly at your race, you can take money from the fund pool. And I don't know how big it is, but I know it's fairly insane as far as size is concerned.
Oh, wow.
And you can actually use that money to run a race. And so that's why I don't know whether actually any of this gets overseas at all, but we see it here in Hong Kong because we're close. And we see like dancing girls, flashing lights, smoke machines, huge LED tracks, you know, that span like the space of 2 football fields and stuff.
Wait,
that's
in
like
China?
In China, yeah, it's insane. There's like
Wait, how come we don't see any of these videos? How come we don't see anything of this here? Like, nobody knows anything of that.
Because they don't have YouTube, so they can't post it on YouTube.
Wait. Can you just go to them and record some of them?
Yeah, next race I'm at, I could probably record some. We've got a couple of team pilots over at one right now, actually, over in a place. So I got contacted about this one. This is over in Nanjing. Right, I've never been to Nanjing before. It's kind of the middle of nowhere in China. It's a fairly large city, actually. But they said, "Oh, we want people to come to the race." And I'm like, "Well, I'm more of a freestyle pilot. I'm not really a race pilot." They're like, "Oh, we don't care, just as long as you wear a shirt that says you're from Australia." And I'm like, "Wow."
Well, that's why I'm assuming that's why Steele is always going to China. Like, he's constantly in China. And that's a lot of. I know that he has a big Asian market. His subscriber base is a big Asian market as well.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense now.
It is because he does wear Hello Kitty goggles.
I must love that.
Yeah.
Do you know how much Hello Kitty is worth? Well, I mean, because it's all made in China too. So the next thing I'm going to ask you is that have you ever seen the Sanrio factory? This company does zero advertising, and it has an insane income. The company's worth $5 billion. Oh, sorry, the market is worth $5 billion a year. So the company's worth like $25 billion with a B. Sanrio, Hello Kitty.
Yeah, their revenue, I'm just having a look now, their revenue is documented at 74 billion RMB, which is, a couple of billion US, right?
Okay, but isn't it more expensive to do this stuff in China because of all the subsidies for sending overseas and such?
Not really, because it's all paid for by the government, and then also on top of that, like, your flight expenses, even if you're Chinese and you want to go to a race. So for example, you're in Shenzhen, which is say how could I say that? That would be more like, say, North Carolina, and then you wanted to go to a race that was in Texas or even say Arizona, right? That'd actually be paid for and funded by the government for you to fly that distance and then go and race that weekend. So there's a lot of people who are saying, "Yeah, I want to race professionally, and then I'm gonna, I'll take that." So it's getting quite big. Everyone who wants to race is getting the opportunity to be able to race.
That's amazing. This is like education, basically. They're like funding education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess it comes along the line as well that China is expecting, obviously, to have some, say, military drones maybe coming up in the future. I don't actually know, but
like
I would say that
world.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would say, like, if you're investing huge amounts into future military technology, such as like autonomous drones or human piloted military drones, it obviously would pay off to start at a ground level and to train younger generations or invest in people who would want to then eventually join the military and then fly a drone. I think it's a genius idea. I'm not saying that's actually what's going on.
Yeah, the U.S. military did the same thing with like video games. They made that U.S. Army game. If China's FPV market is so big, why are we not getting better products out of China?
Because China requires the innovation of the Western market for them to be able to create and innovate new products themselves.
But they're doing it. They're already doing is the Chinese mentality just not creative? They're very creative at copying stuff.
They're very creative at copying stuff, and sometimes even when they copy, they make it better. But to come up with something from scratch, I'm probably going to cop a lot of flack from saying this, but it's the truth, right? And I live here, so I know, and I see it all day, every day, that they don't really innovate good product. The Western market, like Europe or the US, create something that's cool. They look at it and they go, we can do that. And so they either make it exact copy or they make it better and faster than whatever was coming out of the Western market. And the Western guys jump up and down going, oh, you copied me. But they were too slow to market, which is the reason why someone else is winning in that part. So, I mean, it would have been viable at that stage for the guy in the Western market to go to China to get someone in China to make it for them, and they would have been faster and probably not copied. At the same time, when China does make something, even if it is a copy, and as long as they've used good quality components and so forth, they can actually make some of the best quality manufacturing I think I've ever seen coming from China. It just depends on how much you want to spend or how much the factory wanted to spend on its development or on its manufacturing and the materials.
I know that some of the flight controllers that were copied, the copies were actually preferred, like the SPF3. When that started getting copied, it had more memory, better soldering, like the whole board was higher quality. The copy, it was half the price and way higher quality. So I mean, I've seen that too, which is kind of depressing. It's like, why? Man, I can't believe that they have such a big FPV. We don't even know about the FPV scene in China. We don't know anything. Like they could have some of the best pilots that we don't even know.
Let me give you a really cool, really interesting example. So I went and commentated at a event recently over in Shanghai. I do quite a bit of commentating for these Chinese races and so forth because I'm an English speaker and also I'm well known in the industry. So they quite often will ask me to commentate at events and live stream and so forth. So the last one was not the last one, actually, a couple ones before this, but this is the one in Shanghai, was the MWC, so the Mobile World Congress in Shanghai, and they set up inside, like back to back with like Samsung, like a Samsung booth right behind us, and then behind that we had a giant indoor race inside an exhibition hall. So it was a pretty big race, and it was set up. There was lots of pilots from Europe that came over, and we were live streaming. There's photos on my Instagram of the actual setup. It's like a professional TV broadcast setup. And if you do have a look at the Underground FPV Insta, you scroll through, you'll see all those photos. And it was mind-blowing. And I looked at the figures in one point, and I think it was 1.5 million viewers on the live stream.
What? In China?
In China. And the question is how? Did you even hear about this event that was literally like 3 months ago?
Oh my God! What? I mean, they could be exporting so much more. Why are they not?
I really don't know. I just don't think their focus is there for it. Obviously they were
million. That we can't get that from the whole world. Like DRL can't get that from the whole world combined.
Yeah, 1.5 million viewers for a live stream. Like it's just. It's mind-boggling that when I saw the figures, I'm like, wow, that is unreal. That's awesome that so many people are tuned in. But where are they tuning in from? Like, I don't understand. I really don't understand, you know?
Is China blocked from Korea also?
Yes. So Korean pilots are not allowed to race in China.
So this market really is going. So, like, Betaflight doesn't even realize that they have a massive market in China. Like inside China.
Right, exactly. It's a huge market.
Wow, that is really incredible.
But then the moment that if Betaflight did start to charge for the close source it, and then charge like say 50 cents even per license fee to make a board that was Betaflight compatible, then literally within a few hours you would have another version of software called Botaflight would be released.
Good old trusty Botaflight.
Yeah.
Have you guys considered hiring some engineers to make your own flight code?
We actually have a couple of guys who do stuff for us already. So you'll actually see some new Kamikaze firmware being rolled out in Betaflight 3.3. It's just because Betaflight 3.2 was already committed and we couldn't get our hex versions into Betaflight 3.2 because it was already closed, that it'll all roll into 3.3.
Oh, so it's dedicated Kamikaze. It's not Omnibus anymore?
No,
Right.
because we found a whole bunch of bugs with code and actually have our own firmware pre-installed on it so that when you update to a newer version of Omnibus, you're actually removing a bunch of the features that we'd already put into the original version. So, but I do understand that people want to update to the latest version, so we're not going to stop you from doing that. And yes, we do have newer versions, so when people contact us and say, hey, what's the latest version of firmware, then we just email them the latest version. One of the reasons why also we don't list it on our website as well is because if you use our version of firmware with someone else's version of hardware, because our hardware is different, that we don't know what kind of detrimental damage it might do to your board if you installed it, say, on like a iFlight or something like that, which looks similar. It's not the same hardware.
Can you talk about the 4-in-1 ESC that you've been talking about with me?
Yeah. So the 4-in-1 with the metal FETs. So that's on its way now. Actually, they're doing some bits and pieces. We're just finalizing up some stuff on the new all-in-one first before we finish off on the metal FET 4-in-1. So that will be very good. I mean, we had to make a lot of changes because it's such a high amp board. Because one of the reasons that we wanted to do it was for X class as well, because X class is a growing sport. So we want the X class guys to use it so the board needs to flow like maybe around 150 to 160 amps without catching on fire. So that's important. And then obviously it needs to be 8 to 10S as well. So there's some pretty high requirements on that kind of stuff. But I totally get what you're saying with that. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of really cool products in the pipeline, like the Slim Jims that are coming, which if you have a floss frame, the Slim Jims will be like your go-to for it. I won't say what kind of product it is at the moment, but if you're going to be looking for that in the future, you're going to be typing a search term Slim Jim to find something that fits like a floss frame or something like that. We're working intensely on that at the moment. So, those ones are exciting. And then the metal FET 4-in-1 for some guys like DRL, that's definitely something that we're working on because, it's kind of like got to be a plug and play system, exactly like you're talking about. You smash your motor, you want to go quick release a motor, and then you want to pop off your balance, your ESC 3-phase wire with a small AMAX plug, and you just unplug it and change your motor, and then you're flying again. That kind of stuff. Yeah. That is the future.
Okay. Well, the trouble with it's very interesting. The thing we've talked long enough. I'll hopefully get a 45-minute cut of all this after I've cut out all this stuff. The problem is that now I realize that when we talk about this stuff, it's like we have to be so restricted about certain things that it's just annoying. Like you want to talk about things, but you can't because it's like, it's frustrating entirely.
It is extremely frustrating. I mean, especially, we know so much stuff that's going on in the industry, and some of it we're not allowed to talk about, but we know it's like you see something that comes out and people are like, oh, should I buy this? And I'm like, no. And they're like, why? I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could have just if I could have made a podcast about the actual real stuff, like it would be it would be so much more interesting. That's just unfortunate. But ever since I even told people that I wanted to make a podcast, I've had like so many other people contact me that want to be a part of it. Like there's another guy, Skidoosh. He's very similar to you, except you know him?
No, I'm really well. Yeah.
But
we're actually going to have the Skidoosh frames up on the website. If we have time, can I throw in a bit about the Skidoosh frame that you might want to cut in there if we've got time? So Skidoosh is a freestyle pilot. He owns his own factory where he makes giant golf caddies for America and I think some for Europe.
Hello.
Just wants to fly it, but nothing really suited what he wanted. And he was breaking frames and getting really pissed off with the quality of stuff and just saying, like, I've had enough of cheap carbon and cheap design frames and stuff that's not right. So he went and designed his own frame. And then he went and used his manufacturing resources to so he was getting really sick of cheap carbon and people cutting, like, cheap lots of carbon, like not cutting 90 degree and so forth, and just poor quality stuff and poor quality designs that just break. So he designed his own frame and then did a minimum manufacturing run just for himself and ended up with a bunch of Skidoosh frames that he designed, which are absolutely awesome freestyle frames. And he's doing it as a labor of love. He's not doing it to sell these frames. He's doing it purely out of love for something that he wanted to do for himself. And he doesn't care whether he makes $1 or not. It is what it is. And I like that. I think that's so cool that it's not
like me. He's like, you talk to me a lot about this stuff. Yeah. He's a very cool guy.
He's a cool dude, and I really like the guy. He's looking after our boys over in Nanjing right at the moment. He's at that race as well. And yeah, you know, I've got nothing bad to say about Skidoosh. He's just an awesome guy and a close mate. And what he does with his Skidoosh frame is it's just not a money making item. Like, you know, it's just something very cool that someone's done something outside of the realm of I'm going to do this to make some money.
Wait, so then I'd like to collaborate with him and try to get something better and just have one good, solid offering. That would be amazing.
I'm sure he'd be open for it because he's easy to work with as well. So,
any progress on the gimbals? Can you even do they have any kind of prototype feeling gimbal? Can they just simulate it to see if it's even worthwhile?
Lam can CNC one. Thor, did you want to ask Lam if he can CNC one?
Yeah, I will do. I think we spoke about it when we were discussing the project, and I think that was the plan. He got the blank to work off of, so I'll touch base with him again and just see how far down the line that went.
Yeah, just get one, have him make one, and feel it yourselves, and see if you think that it might add any value.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That's it.
I'm open to try anything once.
Yeah, it could really be like a new, it could become all the gimbals. It would become the standard. It could possibly, depending on how it's made, if it's of any use at all.
Oh yeah, well, it's one thing you try it and see.
Yeah, we won't know until we try. So
yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna